guest, or our first guest speaker here today, really spoke about, or introduced this morning, Ben Habib. He is a British businessman and a politician. As for some you may know or may not have known, he was elected as a Brexit Party member of the European Parliament in the 2019 European Parliamentary elections. He remained in the role until the United Kingdom's withdrawal from the EU. Ben, he has also been, as I mentioned, a true ally to Ulster. He has attended numerous rallies opposing Northern Ireland Protocol right across the province. He's been also a key component within the court case, taking the government to court, and then most recently again at the Supreme Court. He has been a continuous thorn in the flesh to those trying to sell the Windsor framework, and as I mentioned, just recently joined the Reform UK Party to take the fight to the non-conservatives who are pro-Brexit and have shown that they are not unionists. So, and he wants to obliterate them at the next election. So, we wish you very well. A big warm welcome to our conference, Ben Habib. Thank you.
Nervous. I mean, I'm normally quite confident when I get up and speak, but I feel today that I'm at the heart of unionism. I'm really at the beating heart of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that makes me feel, it sort of gives me butterflies in my stomach, but I'll try and speak coherently if I can. To start with, I'd like to thank all of you for flattering me with this invitation to be here today. Thank you very much indeed. I am truly honoured to be amongst you. I'd like to thank Ben Lowry to start with, if I may. I can't quite see Ben, but Ben is a stalwart supporter of the union and gives us a voice that we wouldn't otherwise get in the media. I'd like to thank Baroness Hoey I'm going to reverse. 1 second. I want to thank Aileen Quinton for introducing me to Northern Ireland, actually before the Northern Ireland Protocol was a thing. So thank you very much. And Baroness Hoey, who's been a fantastic friend, supporter, and almost like a sort of school mistress to me. She guides me through all the local politics as well as making sure my tie's done up. So all those photographs outside the Supreme Court, they're choreographed by But thank you very much. But perhaps most of all, as an individual, I'd like to thank Jim Allister for the terrific warmth with which he has welcomed me at the many rallies I've been to in Northern Ireland, and generally. He refers to me as an honorary Ulsterman, and of that I am inordinately proud. Thank you very much. But we all have a much greater debt of gratitude to Jim. I'm trying to open something that I want to give him, but we all have a much greater debt than had been broken, contrary to all the lies which Willie has come accustomed to hearing. Contrary to all those lies, actually the acts of union have been set aside, subjugated, disapplied, whichever measly form of words the government lawyers want to use in order to give effect to the protocol. So as a token of my gratitude for being the beating heart of unionism in this room, Jim, and for being such fantastic support, there's a little photograph of the key protagonists in the court case. I'd like to thank Willie as well. I really enjoyed your speech, Willie, and you've had had 64 years in politics. I've had 4. And I'm knackered. But there were some really insightful views from Willie. And of course, I completely agree with Willie. Devolution is not a mechanism by which you pull the union together. It's a mechanism by which you break it up. It only provides a soapbox for those people who have an anti-unionist voice. And there's no benefit in Stormont being restored. None whatsoever. But why am I here? How did I get onto this podium? Well, as a Brexit Party MEP, my primary objective obviously was to get Brexit done. And I realised very early on that the Northern Ireland Protocol was the mechanism by which the EU would seek to defeat Brexit. That it was the Trojan horse, it was the cuckoo's egg in the nest. That's what it was, and it wasn't because I was a genius that I figured this out. Actually, the European Union were blasting it about at the time. Michel Barnier said repeatedly that the price of Brexit would be Northern Ireland. And he kind of gave us a binary choice, which I'm going to come back to later in my speech. But he gave us a binary choice, which was, you either give up on Brexit, or you give up Northern Ireland, and we're going to make sure that it's one or the other of those two. So very early on, it was clear to me that we had to fight the protocol. And I wrote an article in the Telegraph on the 2nd of June. It's funny how these dates stick in your head. 2nd of June 2020, calling out Michael Gove, a key proponent of Brexit, as you know, on what he'd said to the EU Lords Select Committee a week before, that they would sort out the problems of the Irish Sea border through the trading cooperation. They didn't call it that then, but the trading agreement that they were negotiating with the EU. And I called him out on it because actually the agenda for the trading arrangement negotiations that was due to take place the next day didn't even include Northern Ireland. You see, the establishment had already decided and accepted that the price for Brexit is Northern Ireland, and they were prepared to throw Northern Ireland under a bus. And if it wasn't for people like yourselves, Jim, Willie, and other unionists, they would have done it by now. It's only because we've been fighting the fight that we're fighting that we've kept them at bay. But there's a lot more that we have to do. We haven't defeated the protocol, quite contrary to the impression that Rishi Sunak would wish to give you. The Windsor framework, actually, the more I look at it, to start with I thought it was just another form of the protocol. Now I realise it's worse than the protocol. And the reason it's worse than the protocol is because it embeds indelibly EU laws in Northern Ireland. There's no going back from those laws that exist. And you may not have felt the full impact of the EU laws to which Northern Ireland is now subject, because we're still in a kind of grace period, some unilaterally declared by the British government, some in agreement with the EU. But when the full effect of those laws is felt, and they take their toll, the union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is going to be much weaker. And take no succour from this nonsense that a green lane is somehow going to ameliorate the trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That is just, what did you say, Willie? Spin, otherwise known as lies. And that's what it is. This is a green lane that still requires trusted trader status for it to be used. Still requires 21 individual items of information to be provided before you can send goods across. Still requires, and this is an abomination to me, it requires that the EU can have visibility of our sensitive internal trading data between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And why is that important? Because it gives them the ability to compete with our traders internally. We're handing over to our competition sensitive trade data. It is absolutely daft with brushes. But if you did think that the green names somehow were a helpful step in the right direction, you have to remember that the EU has the right in the Windsor framework to unilaterally terminate that arrangement if it should so wish. So we don't even sit in any confidence that the green names will continue. We're going to be permanently on the edge of our seats wondering what's going to happen next. And the Stormont break, which I think we've all now had quite well revealed to us, is yet another subterfuge. There's no break. There's no notion that Stormont can stop a new law or a variation of an existing law coming into force. First of all, you would have to rely on 30 MLAs voting in favour of bringing that to the government's attention. There's a very high bar in order to demonstrate that it has a material adverse impact on Northern Ireland. And then if HMG develops unusually and exceptionally the political will to actually do something with the objection raised by Stormont, it will find that it will be defeated by the EU, because the ultimate authority on whether or not something happens is the EU. And the reason I say that is if we reject a law that they wish to impose on us, they can impose sanctions or take other steps against the United Kingdom. So that, the whole premise of the Windsor framework is a fraud, and it has to be rejected in the strongest possible terms. And just because 515 misguided MPs haven't read the agreement and don't understand it and have therefore voted for it, doesn't make it right. What we've had ever since 2016 is a rearguard action by Parliament to defeat the will of the people. And actually what we saw in Parliament last week was a manifestation of that defeat. The people have been seen off. Rishi Sunak and the establishment think that they've hoodwinked us, that they'll get away with this ploy. They've got the Labour Party on side, and if you need any guidance, if you can't be, if it's too demanding to read the documentation and so on behind the Windsor framework, just know this. If people like John Major, Tony Blair, Michael Heseltine, the Labour Party are all supporting the framework, you know it's wretched. So it was when the framework was revealed that I thought, damn, I'm now going to have to get back into frontline politics. I've been on the side campaigning against the protocol, and I really didn't want to join Reform. I've been talking to Richard for 3 years, and all credit to Richard Tice for keeping Reform going, keeping the flame alive. But I really didn't want to get into party politics. I much preferred being an independent voice of reason outside, not having to toe any party lines. But Anne Widdecombe and I were chatting a few weeks ago, and we realised we needed to get back into party politics because we've got to hold these people in Westminster to account. And you can't do that from the sidelines. You've got to challenge these people. I was going to use a slightly more derogatory term, but you've got to challenge these people electorally. They have to know that the thing that they hold so precious, which is their backside on those green seats, is going to be challenged. That's where we have to hit them. And if I may say so, I think one of the weaknesses in Northern Irish Unionism has been a failure to really come across the Irish Sea and challenge Westminster where it really matters to them. The reason I think the Labour Party doesn't care about Northern Ireland, the reason the Conservative Party ultimately truly does not care about Northern Ireland, they might say that they do, but they don't. The reason they don't, both these parties don't, is because they don't have any seats in Northern Ireland. Your votes don't matter to them. They're going to gain power whatever happens. So somehow we've got to change that. And I think it's absolutely paramount, obviously, that Stormont is not restored. if the Irish Sea border is to be implemented, let the ignominy of that go to British government ministers doing it. Let them do it over the heads of people in this province. But do not somehow become complicit by reforming Stormont and then having, it's not a good expression, but having effectively, you know, blood on your hands as a result of having participated in that process. But unionism has to do much more than that. You know, one of the issues I think about unionism is that you live in a siege mentality because your very existence is threatened perpetually. You're fighting a trench war, and somehow you need to develop the courage to come out of the trenches and take the fight to Westminster. You've got to leave behind local politics in Northern Ireland. Doesn't mean you turn your back on local politics, but you've got to take the fight to Westminster. And as Jordan so well put, I was ticked off actually by Richard Tice when I said it, but I won't say it again. You can tell I'm not suited to party politics. My aim is to obliterate the Tory party. It's not that I've got a vendetta against the Tories. It's because they masquerade as conservative, Brexiteer unionists. Well, they're not conservative. We've seen their economic policies. They're big state interventionists. They want to borrow, they want to tax us, and they want to spend our money. And the tax rate, and I'm going to digress momentarily, the corporation tax rate of 25% that they are about to, or I think comes in April, yeah, next month, about to impose on the United Kingdom is disastrous for the Union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It is disastrous because you are now going to have a corporation tax rate in Northern Ireland which is twice that of the Republic. What do you think that's going to do for business? If you're a businessman looking at setting up in Ireland, on the island of Ireland, where would you go? Do you go to the north where you pay twice as much tax? The infrastructure's been neglected by Westminster and you've got all these issues over the political direction of the province? Or do you go to the south where British money via Brussels has boosted infrastructure spend and you get half the tax rate, and actually with offsets and so on you probably end up with pretty much close to nil corporation tax, which is why they've got Apple and all these other monolithic companies in the Republic. No, that corporation tax rate is a disaster. Rishi Sunak is not a conservative. He does not understand economics and the economics of conservatism. He claims to also to be a Brexiteer. What sort of Brexiteer would have signed up and negotiated the Windsor framework and sold it the way he did? And frankly, I'm not even going to comment on his claim to be a unionist. I don't need to. I think it's clear. So before I finish, I just want to reiterate this one point. Unionism has to come out of Northern Ireland. It has to be integrationist. It has to come to the mainland. It's got to sell its policies on the mainland. It's got to make a stand against Westminster on the mainland and threaten those backsides on the green seats. And I have talked to Richard Tice and Nigel Farage, and Anne Widdecombe is absolutely, if you saw Anne Widdecombe's speech earlier this week, you'll know that she's utterly committed to it. We're all in agreement that saving the Union is our primary objective, and to the extent that we're able, we welcome your participation in it. I'm going to say in England, because actually that's where we need you. We need you in England. And we will, to the best of our ability, and I will, to the best of my ability, put as much of a protective blanket round Northern Ireland and its place in the United Kingdom as I am able. And it may be another, I don't think I'll live another 60 years, so I won't be able to match all that. But I will do it till my dying day. Thank you very much.